What's up, my friends? Welcome back to another video, and today we are taking a look at my desert island orchestral sample libraries, the ones that I absolutely must have. If you put a gun to my head and told me to choose one from each orchestral section and beyond, which ones would I choose? And there's a little spoiler right here, CSS, but we're going to get into that. This was a really difficult video to make because I actually had to sit down and really think to myself, like, what actually would I be using if I were really minimized to just one library per section, right? And I think a lot of us pride ourselves in having so many libraries from so many developers and all filling out all the sections, like 20 string libraries, 50 percussion libraries, whatever. But I think once we start to really grill down and ask ourselves what's really necessary for our own workflows and our own music, then we start to gain some clarity in what's actually necessary for our toolkits. So I found this a quite useful exercise, and I think you might as well if you give this a shot. Ask yourself what your desert libraries are, and I want to share mine with you today. So before we really dive in case you're wondering, past my desert island libraries, you want to find out some more recommendations for each orchestral section and beyond, then I want to give you my sample library buyer's guide. This essentially contains all the libraries I personally recommend on a regular basis because I personally use them quite a bit. I mix and match from different developers depending on the project. And yeah, you can treat it as a buyer's guide or kind of like a pocketbook where you're on the hunt for a new library. If you're curious about my potential thoughts on it, and it might be in there. So think of it as like my personal recommendations. I've also listed the prices so you get a sense of how much they cost and how I would personally use the libraries as well. So it's super comprehensive. You can download it for free right away. Just click the first link in the description box below and you can grab it absolutely free as my gift to you. So without further ado, let's dive in. For strings, again, it would have to be CSS because over the years, it's just been so reliable. Also, the CPU hits aren't that strong. It's kind of on it's about an average in terms of the amount of processing power it takes to run the library. And I also love that you can unload the articulations that you're not using. So I essentially unloaded everything except the sustain legato. And you can see each patch takes up just about just under 500 megabytes. And yeah, let me just play a bit of CSS for you so you can get a sense of the sound. Yeah, it's just super easy to use, very, very playable, and I love the legato and very expressive. So here's the first violins. So smooth, so expressive, right? And it carries on throughout the other patches as well. So here are the cellos. And yeah, so you can imagine if the entire library, all five different sections, were playing, a string passage that had super quiet dynamics all the way up to those soaring highs. CSS does this lyrical type of stuff very, very well. And my style of music is more conducive to this kind of library, so I really enjoy it. And then for Woodwinds, I was struggling between Berlin Woodwinds and Cinematic Studio Woodwinds, but I think in general the consistency of CSW kind of won out for me in the end. And again, featuring the beautiful legato, the overall consistency between the mic positions, the articulations, and so on and so forth, made this the clear winner for me in the end. So let me just show you a couple of examples. Here is the flute. Yeah, I mean those transitions, that expression in every single note, is just irreplaceable. So gorgeous. I just, yeah, love the sound and the expression of CSW. Very beautiful exposed performance. Same can be said for a lot of the other instruments. So here is the solo oboe. So just a very lyrical plaintive tone there in the oboe. And I guess the only kind of downfall you might find in this library is just that because there are multiple dynamic layers that are recorded, sometimes when you're crossfading between them, you kind of get that doubled effect, which you might not necessarily want. So you just have to be careful when writing the mod wheel, and you definitely want to go back in post and definitely tweak the modulation data to make sure it's sounding as smooth and convincing as possible. So CSW is definitely my number one choice at the moment for Woodwinds. Then we move on to brass, and although Cinematic Studio Brass is an awesome library and there are certainly contexts I use it for, Cinebrass for me is still the golden standard, and I just really love the sound. I mean, the sound makes it worth using for me, even though it's like over a decade old. It still serves a purpose very, very well. And the way this library works is that by default, the short articulations are mapped to the velocity. So when you play super light, the articulations are very short. And when you play harder, the articulations or the short notes are much longer, more like a marcato. So if I play at full strength, you can hear how those notes kind of drag on for a little bit longer. And then the mod wheel kind of dictates how loud those samples are or how, dynamic they are. So mod wheel all the way at the bottom. Push out the mod wheel. And that entire time, I was still pressing the exact same velocity, very light, so I could trigger the shortest note. But overall, you can hear the brass, how it resounds in the room. The Sony scoring stage sound is just beautiful. So those are some of the shorts. And then there's also the legato, which for its time, I think was quite ahead of its time. So. Right, so just that full declamatory tone. I believe it's 3 trumpets playing together. Yeah, beautiful. And then we also have the horns. Let me maybe scroll down to the library itself here so you can see. So it's a Cinebrass core. I just chose 2 of the patches here. So the trumpet ensemble and the 6 horns ensemble. So again, we'll start with the short notes, and then I'll use the pedal to trigger the legato. Yeah, gorgeous. And that's the Dennis Sands mix. So Dennis Sands, the film scoring engineer mixer, he basically created the default mix for these libraries. And so of course, you have the other positions as well, which you can customize: dry, room, ambient, warm, and then there's a couple other mixes, the bright John Williams mix, and then you can create your own custom mix from the mic positions as well. Then moving on to percussion, Cineperc is my go-to without a shadow of a doubt. Use it all the time for all my percussion, traditional percussion. So here's the timpani. So it's really cool because for the timpani patch, you get both the hits and the rolls kind of mapped to the same patch. The rolls are just a bit lower than the hits themselves. So a pretty intuitive way to work here, and I enjoy the sound quite a bit. Then we have the cymbals. I really only use 2 of those samples, the roll cymbals. I'm going to turn the volume actually down quite a bit more because it is quite a loud patch. And then for the crash cymbal, it just gives me that spank that I really like all the time. Then we have the drum kit, which is in Cineperc Pro, but of course it's in the entire Cineperc library, which comes with all 4 packages. So yeah, processed and mixed beautifully by Dennis Sands. And those are kind of some of the featured patches that I use all the time in my writing. Then piano. I mean, if you know me at all by this point, you know I love Cine Piano. It is my go-to piano library. I don't use anything else quite as much as Cine Piano for pianos. So excuse me while I indulge myself in some Cine Piano. Yeah, so that's just the default Cine Piano patch, but they also give you a classical patch, which has a slightly further sound, cinematic, which is much more intimate, but it's quite warm, and there's a long tail at the end. And then the Rock Studio Grand, you can imagine, is just super high dynamic layers and very aggressive in a way. So love that library. And then for harp, I use Cineharps. Super simple, right? And so here's the concert harp patch with a Plux. And then we have the pre-recorded glissandi. So I love this because you can trigger like different glissandi lengths, and if you press lighter, it creates like half that glissando, but if you press hard, then it creates that full glissando. And they have up directions, down directions. Yeah, and depending which key you're pressing, you're essentially activating that that glissando in that key. So if I press an A, it's going to be an A major, right? And of course, you can key switch between the different scale types and also the length of them as well, short, medium, and long. So just a very useful, very intuitive, and fun harp library to use for sure. And the sound is wonderful. So there we go. And then for solo cello, it's got to be Tina Guo, again from Cinesamples. Just love the overall sound of this thing, and it's, yeah, very, very nice. I mean, especially as you get down into those lower registers there, you really hear that grit and that bow sound from Tina's cello. The way she performs those notes, just so powerful down there. And then when she goes higher, she transitions into that soaring high voice for the cello that is so seamless and works so well in so many situations. So that's solo cello. And then for choir, there's quite a few choices here. There's Chorus by Audio Imperia. There's Stress Off Sampling's Choir, Storm Choir Ultimate, and so on and so forth. But the ones I find myself using because I'm just so familiar with them right now, I use the ones from Metropolis Arc and from Time Macro. So let me go to that really fast. Arc 1 has these beautiful searing high choirs that I just use the sustains from all the time, the men and the women. And then from Time Macro, I use the mixed choir ahs and oohs, and they have a very light and buttery sound as well. So here are the loud choir or female choir sustains. So good. And then we have the Time Macro mixed choir. Notice how they only go up to an MF here, and then the quietest is PP. So just a really nice dynamic range there for sure. And then finally, for sound design, I use Elysian, and a lot of flexibility, but I just love the ability to create these pulses and these rhythms out of basically nothing. You have so many default, I guess, presets you can choose from. Really cool way of assorting them by time signature, by the character, and then you get to choose the one you want. So super useful. And I just love the overall approach to this library. That you know, the space kind of feeling, the fact that it's so cinematic. Like there's a lot of reverb and the sound is so wide. There's so much depth to the sound here. It just makes doing sound design so easy. And then for the rest of my sound design needs, I will use something like Serum to create my sub basses and other noises that I might need in a production. But yeah, generally that's pretty much it. And I am very happy with the selection I currently have. I honestly probably have way too much. So I probably should do a deep cleaning, go through some of the stuff that I won't use anymore. And I'll definitely do a video on that. Just like I've decided to clean up my libraries. Which ones did I get rid of? And then I'll kind of explain why and the reasoning behind all of that. So, but yeah, it's always fun to kind of revisit some of the old classics. You stick to the ones that you find trustworthy and reliable and just fun to play with. I think the libraries that give us inspiration and are just fun and easy to use and don't take up too much CPU power and maintain the inspiration, those are great indications of libraries that will just stand the test of time for us. And it's really no secret why Cinemax Studios, Cine Samples, and other similar companies, they have such loyal followings because the products are simply just so good. Of course, they all have their flaws. No library is perfect, but they're usually very characterized in one specific direction. And I think these libraries do that one thing that they're designed to do very, very well. So yeah, those are my choices. Let me know in the comment below what your desert libraries are. Maybe let me know for each particular section: strings, winds, brass, percussion, and any others you might be using at the moment in your templates. Love to hear your personal choices and why you like to use them as well. And again, if you want to know more about my personal preferences and not just my desert island choices, but my entire recommendation suite, then I want to give you my sample library buyer's guide 100% free. You can check it out in the description box below. Just click it there, click the link there, and you can grab it right away as my gift to you. Super comprehensive. It goes through all the libraries that I would personally recommend for different situations, and also how much they cost as well. So you get a nice, well-rounded guide to read over whenever you have time. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.